This episode is sponsored by Hero Schedule. If your department needs better scheduling software that isn't outdated, clunky, and expensive, Hero Schedule is an easy switch, and they give you a free 30-day trial. Get started at heroschedule.com and click on Try Hero Schedule. From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court-ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. To hear details about all the applications of Ditto Transcripts and exactly why this is a key solution for your organization's workload issues, check out episode 232. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Welcome, Chief Scott Hughes. Thanks for coming on the show, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eric. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been connecting for a bit. You put out a lot of great stuff on LinkedIn for developing leaders for any role, really, just to look at critical insights and topics related to policing. So I appreciate what you're doing for the space, and I'm excited to have you on to talk about a specific topic that I'm sure we'll start in one place and we'll probably reach different tentacles on different overlapping perspectives here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've been doing this for a few years now. I think getting ready to enter year 30, if my math is correct.
Yeah.
And, as I approach the end of my career, I want to make sure that I'm giving out as much information as I can to anybody who's willing to listen or read. Because, that's how we make the profession better. We just can't keep kicking the can down the road. We have to pass on the lessons that we've learned along the way to the next generation. And it's kind of what I hope to do with my writing and my own things that I'm involved with. So, yeah, thanks for that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's the learning from, let's say, the experiences, not always mistakes. Sometimes they're the triumphs of others. We learn from those rather than just all learning from our own experience, right? We don't need to touch the hot stove. We can take the word of other people.
Right. Yeah. I always say, don't do anything without putting it in Google first, because somebody's probably already done it, good or bad.
Yeah.
So before you make that decision or before you decide, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, punch it into Google and see if it worked for somebody else. Chances are, if it did, run with it. But if it didn't, then we need to figure out a different option and pursue that. And one thing, I was having this conversation with somebody last night, is mentors. Mentors in this profession are just so critical to have folks you can rely on and lean on and bounce ideas off of, people you trust. My personal experience is some of those mentors haven't even been people within my own region. They've been people throughout the country, because sometimes the best ideas don't come from within your four walls or within your kind of circle of people you see all the time. And again, all that just to say, yeah, we got to keep doing what we're doing to advance the profession.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what this project is all about. And you talk about mentorship more than ever. I mean, as you point out, we can't keep doing the same thing. The world is moving faster and faster. I mean, you said Google, and I'm almost like, and AI, right? Because then it compiles all these anecdotes and these perspectives in this really streamlined way. But yeah, how do we learn faster with a really young industry? This attrition's out of control at times. It has been recently. So we have people that are, younger or more junior in the seats, that they need that mentorship so we can try to keep up with the pace of things and the necessity.
Yeah. We got to keep them. Right. We got to keep them in this profession. I was having a conversation again with someone not too long ago, and they suggested to me that if we can keep an officer for 5 years, we're doing a good job. And not that they're going to leave the profession in 5 years, but these kids, quote unquote, they bounce department to department. Probably when you started, definitely when I started, and the folks who were around before when I got hired back in the day. You got hired at a department, you stayed there for 20, 25, 30 years, whether it sucked or it was the best place ever. You just stayed there. There was that loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they're not loyal today, but it's just different generations. I believe in that there is some truth to that. And that is, if you can keep them here for a handful of years, you've done something right. So it's part of the reason why, I think we're going to talk about evaluations.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason why I kind of wrote that blog on my website was just to talk about, you know, let's not waste our time with things that don't matter. Let's try to keep these officers as long as we can, keep them focused and keep them tuned in to what's really important, not do things because that's the way we've always done them, which, as many people have said, that's the worst phrase in the English dictionary, if you
Yeah.
will.
At the same time, we as cops hate change, right? We hate things
Right.
staying the same. We hate change. But I love that you just kicked it off because when this airs, it won't be super far off, probably back a few episodes, maybe a couple weeks, but a focus on the generational differences and what we as responsible leaders should be recognizing and then be open to for engaging the different generations, especially the younger folks that loyalty it's just packaged differently, right? And like the sense of loyalty in it, my perspective and what I've learned is it goes to so much to loyal to their mission, their personal values, and the scope of that, not just, quote unquote, just the agency that hired them. And that's what we're seeing. And so this is super relevant when we talk about evaluations. And you talked about trying to be, a guide and mentor through your writing. That's exactly, I mean, we've messaged for a while to have you on, but that's what screamed out to me. I was like, yes, let's talk about that because met so many officers, leaders from all over the region through the years, and then through this project even more so. And that seems to be a common thread. We tend to we have our unique challenges, but we have a lot of commonality as far as the culture. And that's one thing that most people will agree that the evaluation process, evals, performance evals, are generally not super useful, super helpful. So yeah, let's just jump into it.
Well, I think, yeah. So thanks, Eric. So I think the first thing to understand is when I talk about evaluations, I am not referring to someone who's in field training, right? The FTO process
Yeah.
or that probationary status where they're in their first year, whatever your probationary period is at your agency. Because those are critical times, right? Those are times where we absolutely 100% want to capture performance and make sure they're hitting metrics that whatever the department says those metrics might be, because we're trying to get a gauge for whether or not this person is going to be a fit for this department. So let's be clear that when I talk evaluations, I'm not talking about FTO. I'm not talking about that first year, whatever your probationary period is. I'm talking about the one that you've been there for 10 years, 11 years, 12 years. And every December, you get summoned into some office, or January, you get summoned into an office, and a sergeant throws this piece of paper in front of you and says, "Hey, here's your evaluation for the last year." And, you look at it and it looks just like the same evaluation you got last year. It's a bunch of check boxes that are marked, or it's a bunch of numbers that are circled. There's very little, if any, thought given to it. And quite honestly, it doesn't mean anything. I have seen evaluations handed out that had the wrong name on them. I've been
Mm,
exposed to an evaluation once in my career where the evaluator forgot to change the date to the new year that he was evaluating me on.
yeah.
I've had evaluations, I've seen evaluations where when you lay one evaluation down to the next evaluation, it's the identical evaluation. They just copy and change the name. And that just goes to show you that they're meaningless. They absolutely don't mean anything in most organizations. If you're covered, for example, if you're covered by a union contract or some kind of a bargaining agreement, your pay rate, your vacation, your quote benefits, they're already in black and white in another document. Evaluations, in my opinion, are something that was pushed in from the HR department because they work in the private sector. And I talk about this in the article. In the private sector, they can measure a spreadsheet, or they can look at spreadsheets, and they have different metrics of how much sales and how many leads did you generate, and whatever the private sector needs to track, they can track it. Therefore, you can rate them based off of that number. We don't have quotas in law enforcement. We don't have those really distinguishable numbers that you can just look at and put it and put a ranking or a rating next to it. So In my opinion, they kill morale. They don't develop people. They're just used because someone said, "Hey, we have to do them." And the reality is, if you are a underperforming or a poor employee, you don't wait 365 days before you address that behavior, right? Like if you suck, they know they suck well before the evaluation is complete. And here's the thing, if they don't know they suck until they sit down with you as the evaluator, then you got a whole nother set of problems on your
Yeah.
hands that need to be addressed, right?
Hmm.
So, think again in the private world, they make sense because there are bonuses attached to them and there's raises attached to them and there's vacation times attached to it and PTO time and all these things that are attached in the private sector. But for most of us in the government, those are already defined. So we're doing these and they're quite honestly just a waste of time. Get the sergeants back on the street, doing what they need to be doing and get them out of the office.
Yeah, yeah. So you said a lot there, and I think that you even offered what some people would respond with, which is, well, what if someone's not doing great? And you said it, which is it should be addressed, it should be documented, it's counseling or whatever your agency calls it, potentially a development plan. And that's very separate than a routine performance eval. So what would you say to those that say, well, we do want to capture like how somebody's doing and we want to recognize good work too? What's your response to that?
So for me, what I do at my agency, so I've been there, I'll be the chief 10 years next month. So when I got there, this was the first thing that, I'm finally in charge and I finally got the power to make some change. And I'm like, we're not doing these anymore because again, we're governed by a CBA, collective bargaining agreement. We don't need them. So instead, what I did was I made the sergeants essentially meet with their employees every month. And when body cams came on to into the space, we started tying in the body cam reviews with like these monthly, I don't want to call them monthly evaluations because that's not what they are.
It's like
But
a
they're
touch
basically,
base, like a check-in or something.
yeah, yeah. You know, for a lot of departments, they are doing spot checks on the body cams. Now, that's a whole nother issue because
Yep.
some departments they do spot checks on body cams, but they're only doing them to try to catch guys doing things wrong
Mhm.
and trying to catch gals messing up. That's if that's all you're doing with the body cam reviews, then you're missing the mark, much like doing these evaluations. What I do, and what I ask the supervisors to do is they pick, 5 or 6 calls for service. So typically we'll take, domestics, we'll take a dispute, we'll take some traffic stops and maybe just another random call. And they just pick them at random. And they actually type out a synopsis, of that call. So for
Mhm.
example, on February 25th 2026 at 1 o'clock p.m., Scott Hughes made a traffic stop on Eric Smith on Main Street at Third Avenue. He got out of the vehicle, he didn't slam the car door, he approached the vehicle, he scanned the back seat, he stayed behind the B pillar. He professionally greeted the driver, retrieved the documents, didn't turn his back when he walked back to his cruiser. You get the idea.
Mhm.
So we're actually critiquing their behavior and we're reinforcing officer safety principles because that's important. If we want cops to be safe on the street, we got to reinforce officer safety. So they're looking at the totality, if you will, everything involved from how the professionalism to the tactics to whatever else depends on the call for service. But you get the idea. And what we have found is when you call them in and you actually spend some time with them and they understand that, hey, these are not, I'm trying to get you moments. These are just reinforcing, hey, this is what worked really good. This is what you might want to think about next time. You also get to have genuine conversations. Supervisors get to have genuine conversations with their people. And we say this in a lot of the classes that we teach. Trust is the backbone of all relationships.
Yep.
So if you want to be an effective, I don't want to talk about, I know we're not supposed to be talking about supervision, but if you want to be an effective supervisor, your people have to trust you. If they don't trust you, you're not going to get anywhere with them. So these monthly meetings allow the supervisors to kind of develop that trust and evaluate them essentially every single month. So part of the conversation might be, hey, the weather's getting ready to break. What are your thoughts on bike patrol? What are your thoughts on, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
whatever the assignment might be, figure out where they might want to go. There's going to be detective opening, canine. You get the idea. So they get to have that conversation.
Yeah, I like it. And you said it wasn't directly focused on supervision, but that is the point of performance evaluations. And just as you pointed out that the system itself or certain types of checkbox evals might not be accurately encapsulating the quality of work of an officer or their abilities. Similarly, it doesn't really capture the supervisor's supervision aspects, right? Like you have the archetypical copy and paste where it's verbatim the same, just different officer name. You have the examples of, hey, tell me what you want in your eval, send it to me, and then that's like a copy and paste, right? So
Right.
we
Right.
know these kind of archetype issues. But one thing that you said that does go back to supervision and the generational aspects is you have that frequency of touch, you have that face to face. It's not just something, a contact or a question coming from a complaint or reading a report, be like, hey, I don't really understand what happened here, because that's your built-in critique. But it's that face to face thing that younger generations thrive off of. That's how they communicate value. And in that generational episode, we're talking about, when I started and prior, for sure, like, if no news from the Sarge is good news. Just keep doing your thing until you hear otherwise. And so
Mhm.
I love that you play on that aspect. It's not like we're ignoring work, but these are actual reasons and these are set intentions to actually sit down beyond just, 6 months or a year. There is one thing I want to point out too with the body cam, because for those that don't have a randomized body cam, and then anyone's going to be like, okay, of course, chief and commander think that this is a great idea. I don't like that all I review on body cam is use of force, pursuits, and complaints. Essentially,
Mhm.
that's the only time I review anything. I know my guys and gals do fantastic work that's just not exciting. It's not quote unquote sexy. It's just really sound tactics, really good compliance, good de escalation, or just a good community contact. I don't see those though, right? So we don't capture really what the bulk of their policing looks like. We just look at these higher liability, types of metrics. So it's not like a holistic view for sergeants and for commanders when you are doing something like performance evals.
Yeah, and we as the job continues to evolve and as we have more and more regulations and requirements that we're putting on officers, we're as the chief, as the commander, a lot of that is filtering down. So I'm giving it to you, you're giving it to a lieutenant, lieutenant's delegating it to a sergeant. And I feel like that's where we have to be very, very careful is that we don't tie our sergeants down so much that they can't see their people work. To your point, as a commander, yeah, you may only see the bad things. I'm putting that in air quotes, but I hope your sergeants are seeing the good things, and the lieutenants are seeing those good things, and that has to make its way up the chain because if not, it's going to be very easy for you to, I'm a little tongue in cheek here, but you're going to think all your people are just terrible because that's all you ever see is the bad things, and damn well they're doing a lot of good things out there. And that's why I like just picking 5 random calls for service. That they're not use of force. Use of forces are going to get reviewed. Pursuits are going to get reviewed.
Right.
That's going to happen regardless. So let's pull other calls for service or other areas that aren't as frequent and really get to see our folks working. And if they are bogged down with a lot of administrative tasks, at the very least, this forces them to see their cops performing. I'll give you a great example. As the chief, I don't get to see my people work 24/7, but I get obviously the highlights are brought to my attention. And I was watching one of my guys just last week on a mental health call, and I was so proud
Hmm.
of the way that he handled that mental health call that it reminded me, man, I got phenomenal cops out there working. And it
Yeah.
puts you're ready to put you in the right frame of mind. Like that's what it's like at 10:30 on a Saturday night when somebody's been doing mushrooms and drinking alcohol for 8 hours. You know what I'm saying? It it,
Hmm.
it forces you to kind of relate or to stay in tune with your people, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
absolutely. And that's the thing. You brought up the importance of field supervisors in field supervision, right? So you want sergeants out and about, and you do highlight how this removes that another administrative load where they're at a computer. Those that are really organized, good managerial skills per se, yeah, they keep a folder, they keep cases and stuff like that. But it does take a lot of time to write a really good, in depth, robust eval. At the same time, with your model, it's meeting with them regularly. So you get that face to face. but also you're able to talk about real stuff because, even when I say like reviewing use of force, it's people doing great work, right? They're really trying to de-escalate and they're very patient, empathetic at times. But then I'm writing a kudos on how they tried to de-escalate and the person just wasn't having it, right? That's
Right.
usually what it is. But think about all the times that you're doing great work. And it also makes me think about and the power of social media. A lot of agencies are really getting on board featuring body cam to tell your own story and show the public the reality. And a lot of times, like if your management and your leaders see that, then they're like, oh my gosh, this is like, look at how empathetic that person was. And like, look at how we actually got this person help. We don't get everyone help. Not everyone wants it. And so you can showcase that. And what a great opportunity to really be transparent about community policing, what we're really doing out there.
Yeah, and you mentioned this generation, and I like to remind folks that the number one intrinsic motivator with people is positive recognition.
Hmm.
If you don't see your direct reports doing something good in 7 days, then you're not looking. There's absolutely no way that you can't find your people doing something good. Now, you may choose to not want to see it, which is a whole nother issue.
Hmm.
But people want to know they're doing a good job. And we talk about motivation. And yeah, this generation gets beat up a lot, which I don't necessarily agree with. They want to know when they're doing a good job. Whether you like it or not, they want to know. Everybody wants to know they're doing a good job. You want to know as a commander, you're doing a
Absolutely.
good job. I want to know from my boss as the chief, I'm doing a good job. My elected officials want to know from the community they're doing a good job. It's just how people get motivated. And again, I go into stories when I teach my leadership classes about how just telling someone, hey, good work, I appreciate what you did out there, is enough to motivate them to want to go out there and do it again.
Hmm.
Again, too many departments focus on the bad and not the good. It's the same reason I say that you should have more attaboys in your files than negative in your file. There's systems out there now where you can track attaboys, and a lot of departments, they're using those systems, they're using them the wrong way. They're just putting discipline in there. So whenever someone hears that platform's name, they cringe because they're like, "Oh no." They're not using it the right way. So motivating your people, let them know they're doing a good job. All that does is makes them better, makes you better, makes the department better, makes the community better, helps develop that trust we talked about earlier. To kind of backtrack a little bit, when you're only sitting down with your employees once a year and it's meaningless, then it's a waste of time, and that's not developing, making your people any better.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely. I'm full on there. And so when you think about that positive reinforcement, we think about the old school that we talked about earlier. The absent information, like they're going to make up their own thing, right? Like that's something that we say about cops a lot too, right? If no news, like I'm going to make up my own news. And so if you're not telling people what you want more of, if you don't have examples of that, like how are they supposed to know, right? If we're thinking about the younger, newer officers, if they're not hearing any feedback. And I think a lot of what you're saying, to put it into terms that I think even your guild reps and your union folks will really resonate with, is like, hey, we want to recognize good work. And so what would you say to those that they like the idea, but man, they've really seen some cultures seem to use these tools in kind of a negative frame, right? Like an early warning system and not recognizing the good.
We have an early warning system. I think every professional department should have an EWS or some kind of a warning system built in place because, right, wrong, or indifferent, we do need to pay attention for certain behaviors. We owe it to each other to make sure that if someone's going down the wrong path, that it's dealt with accordingly. If I understand your question correctly, I think it all starts with the organizational culture. I think if the culture of the organization is one that's not trustworthy or one that's just rooted in just toxicity and nobody trusts anybody and there's backstabbing and all that stuff going on, I would turn the podcast off right now because you've got your own kind of set of circumstances that need to be addressed. Now, I'm not saying you can't change that, but that's going to take a lot of work, and depending upon where you are in the food chain, you may end up just burning your head on the wall because you're not going to make the kind of progress. If you get to my level or your level and you get buy-in from people and you can start to show folks, hey, this is the roadmap, this is where I want to go, this is the direction we're going, then I think that conversation becomes easier. It's been my experience traveling and teaching and speaking that departments who are reluctant to try something like this out, uh, it's either we've always done it this way and we're not going to change, it's a culture thing, or there's other deep rooted issues that until those get fixed, until they fix that foundation, we can't do anything with the walls. They're going to continue to they're going to continue to fall in because the foundation's not strong. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it totally does, because that's really what I was getting at, and what you underlined is it's a cultural thing, and right. And so, what's the difference between a weapon and a tool? A hammer, I mean, it could be used to build things, it could be used to hurt people. So, if you give someone the tool, what defines if they use it as a weapon? Well, the culture, right?
$100%.
Where does that play out? And so, I would even submit that with the system that a lot of places have, which is, hey, I'm going to review body cam for use of force. Well, use of force isn't pretty, and we know that. And so, if you don't see a whole view, and maybe people here I'm like focusing on this because I think it's a really intriguing thought, reviewing random work, but then building that into this quote unquote quote evaluation development sessions, right? Um, where I want to
I'll
go
tell you
to,
this,
yeah,
Eric. Oh,
please.
sorry. We just went through a state accreditation, and what's the word I'm looking for? One of the
Assessors,
yeah,
auditors.
well, one of the categories you had to kind of meet. One of the topics that had to be addressed was evaluations, and for me to become state accredited, I had to do evaluations, and I said, yeah, we don't do them, and they were like, what do you mean you don't do them? I said they're a waste of time. We don't do them. I said, when have they ever been anything? We're a union department. Everybody gets pay raise when they hit their anniversary date. If they're not that good, they won't be here. So why are we doing them? Well, how you know what your people are doing? Well, because I have supervisors and we do our jobs. But they were like, well, I don't know how we're going to do this. So I ended up having to. It wasn't a big deal, but I had to type up a memo. Basically, they could put in my file that basically took what we're talking about right now and put it in black and white. But it's funny because I then heard back from the people who were telling other places around the state what we're doing. And now they've reached out and said, hey, can you send us some examples of those body cam reviews and how you kind of tie it in so I'm hopeful that other folks will catch on. Getting HR on board is going to be its own challenge, but you know, that is what it is. But I like to see other departments kind of catch on to this concept or something like it, where you're just meeting with your people all the time or frequently, and you're staying engaged. I kind of talked about the way we do them. We tie in officer safety because I'm big on officer safety. If our people don't go home, then we failed. But if we don't reinforce those officer safety concepts, it's very easy to forget how dangerous this job is. So I'll digress from there, but I just wanted to make that point.
No, that's great. And I think that it's worth saying, because I think a lot of listeners would say, well, you do evaluate and review performance. You just call it something different, right? And so you're getting to what the spirit of this thing was, because what was the point of an eval? Well, it's to monitor an officer's performance and development and identify, ways that we can improve what they're doing and support the good stuff that they're doing. Right. And so
Yeah.
by
Yep.
actually meeting and reviewing work, not just paper, not just, what comes in through the email of a kudos from prosecution or a complaint from, a witness, you have a more true, probably objective view because you can see it and talk with them in real time.
Yeah, one of the I don't laugh because it's funny. I just chuckle because it's so common. An officer will do something that they should have known better. And in some cases it will make the news. And if it's criminal, the news reporters, they're going to call the department and they're going to file a public records request or a FOIA, whatever it's called in your jurisdiction. And they're going to say, I want to see Officer Smith's personnel file. So, somebody spends all day doing the redactions. They ship them the personnel file. And then there's the reporter on the 5 o'clock news standing in front of the station with the manila folder.
You train for the threats you can see, but what about the ones you can't? United Diagnostic Services brings hospital grade diagnostic technology directly to first responder agencies, making early detection of cardiovascular disease and cancer more accessible than ever. UDS provides comprehensive early detection programs using advanced ultrasound, CT calcium scoring, stress echoes, and innovative blood panels to identify potential health risks long before symptoms appear. It's proactive, on site, and built specifically for those who serve. Early detection saves lives and careers. Learn more at udshealth.com.
In their hand,
Mm-hmm.
and they say, I just got a copy of Officer Smith's personnel file, and his last 4 performance reviews, he met or exceeded expectations. It's unclear why he decided to do whatever it was. Well, if all they're doing is meet with their people once a year, then how would they really know them? Right now, again, there's many variables that come into play. But my point is this: if you're meeting with your people frequently and those kind of behaviors start to happen, the hope is that the supervisor or whoever the evaluator is will start to see something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll see a pattern developing. Maybe they won't, but maybe they will. And man, if we could have caught some of these things early on, wouldn't it have been great, as opposed to seeing that reporter stand in front of the news station holding that evaluation up or holding that personnel file up, and now we have an officer who's been arrested, whatever the case might be. But I think you get, you know what I'm saying? Like, you get the point
Yeah,
I'm
for
trying
sure.
to make? Okay.
Yeah, and I think, we talk a lot about wellness and resilience on this show too. And so outside of the really bad stuff, like, it's an opportunity just to get FaceTime and look real anecdotes of what the work is looking like. So you could have the squared away someone with a really good reputation for being safe, for being calm, cool, collected. Maybe they're a force trainer, something like that. And then if their tactics are kind of messed up and they seem a little terse, they seem a little on edge, in a call like recently, maybe the last month, a couple of them, you're like, hey man, are you okay? Right? This is not categorical. Like, there's no issue here. There's no policy violation. It just seems like this guy got under your skin a little bit more than usual. Are you okay?
Right.
I think that that's such a valid role for a supervisor.
Yeah. Eric, really what we're talking about, why we started off with evals, we kind of went to culture, and I think we're kind of staying that course. We're talking about culture. We're talking about being a good leader. We're talking about being a good supervisor. Uh, and if and it's the same theme. If you have good supervisors at that first line level, typically you're going to decent shifts and decent group of folks. Now, does that mean you can have the best department out there? Does that mean you're not going to have problems? Of course not. You've got personalities. You got folks going through things. Chief's going to make decisions that people don't agree with, and you're going to have to hold somebody or somebody's accountable at times, and they're not going to like that. And yeah, it's not always going to be great. My point is, but if 85 or 90% of the time things are going good because we got the right organizational culture in place, then I think all of this makes sense, and it's easier to roll this out with the trust. If there's no trust, if the culture's not there, then doing what we're talking about is going to be difficult to do. And those departments and that kind of mindset are the ones that I feel bad for, because I just wish I could wave a wand and fix it.
Mhm.
But that takes a lot of self-reflection, and probably a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of people willing to say, hey, you know what, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe the way we have been doing it isn't the right way. Maybe, we got to get out of this mindset of that's the way we've always done it. A lot of chiefs, especially sheriffs, not so much, but a lot of chiefs, especially, they get promoted, and, they go to change something, and now they've got their higher ups telling them, no, don't start making any changes now. Things are going good around here. Don't be making any changes. So then you go into self-protection mode, and you're just like, well, I just need to get to 5 years and I can retire. And then, you know where this is going, right? Then you
Mhm.
start to see the culture suffer. Then you start to see morale start to suffer. And then you start having internal problems. There's no trust, and we're just kicking that can down the road. So
Yeah, that really goes to a bigger conversation because then we're at status quo, which I think for our profession quickly goes to stagnation. And if you're not growing, you're
right,
decaying because the
100%.
world is changing. And so we need to, with it, not just change to change, but like wonder how can things get better. And you pointed out, I think so accurately, which is you won't know unless you reflect and you ask yourself, you're curiously objective, saying like, how can we be better? What could be improved? Are things really great just because they are? Just because we say so?
Yeah. None of us are perfect. I know I've done things in my career probably today that I'm like, God damn it, I should have done something different, right? Like, shoot, that wasn't what I
Likewise,
meant to do.
plenty of them.
So I think we all can admit we're all human. We all make mistakes. But I think if folks realize that, generally speaking, you're doing things for the right reason, um, taking care of your people, making them better. I think you'll get the buy-in from folks that I think you're really looking for. I know I've had to look in the mirror and say, man, I probably should have done this different. If this happens again, I'm going to do it this way. I'm not going to do it that way. Now, whether or not that incident will occur again where I can do it differently, it depends on what it is. Yeah. Constantly evaluating yourself, especially the higher up you go, to make sure that what you're doing is making the positive change down below, because as you know, the higher up you go, the further you get separated from the day-to-days, it's easy to lose touch. It's easy to lose touch. And if all you're doing is looking at use of force and complaints, it's easy to get jaded. Even though 99% of my people are out there doing great work, all I ever see are the bad stuff, right?
Mhm.
It's always this shift. It's always this guy. It's always, always, always. And it can be very easy to form that opinion about somebody. Well, that guy is making the most car stops. That guy's making the most gun arrests. That guy's getting involved in the most pursuits because he's the most aggressive guy in the department, But if you look through it through one lens, it's easy to get very jaded. So, I think I want to make one point real quick, if it's okay with you.
Please.
And if you don't like it, you can just edit it out, I guess. But
No,
you
we're
know,
rolling with it.
I was thinking about this early on. I just forgot to make the point. You remember the FTO process?
Yeah.
Right. The FTO process, you get, you graduate the police academy, and of course every state's different, but you graduate the police academy and you've worked your butt off for 4, 6, 9 months. You've got yourself probably in the best physical shape you've been in. And I love to give this example. In most departments, they're using the traditional, what I call the San Jose model, right? Or the typical FTO manual where you've got this daily observation report that you fill out, and it's based off of the SEGs, the standardized evaluation guidelines. And category 1 is uniform appearance or something along those lines, uniform or appearance. And when I started, we had 1 through 7, right?
Mhm.
1 was you suck, 7 was you were awesome, 2 through 6 were whatever. Well, then we decided one day that 1 through 7 was too many choices. So we went to 1 through 5.
Mhm.
I remember asking somebody one time when I was teaching an FTO class, I said, somebody in this room, tell me the difference in uniform appearance between a 4 and a 5. And they all just kind of looked around the room. I said, okay, what's the difference between a 1 and a 2? And they all kind of looked at each other like, I don't know. I said, how many of you had this happen? Graduate the academy, day 1, you're tip top, your brass is shined, your hat's on the right way, your trim, everything's perfect, right? You look like you
Perfect,
stepped
yeah.
off a Paris Island, like as a DI. I mean, you are ready to rock and roll. And you get your daily observation report for that day. And on a 1 through 5, you get a 3.
Because it's middle. I don't have to document it if it's middle.
Amen, right? If it sucks, I got to document. If it's great, I got to document. But if it's the middle of the road, I don't have to document anything. And I remember thinking, this is insane. Like, this doesn't make sense. So one of the things that we did that I thought was awesome was we got rid of the numbers. We took the numbers out of the out of the evaluators' brains. We narrowed it down like 3 or 4 categories: not acceptable, acceptable, exceeds, not observed,
Yeah.
and maybe not responding to training or something. But the day we did that, you could sense the FTOs like,
Yeah.
and
Straightforward, right?
yeah. And I look at performance evaluations the same way.
Yeah.
We're already busy. We don't want to spend a lot of time writing things down. So it's easy just to circle numbers and move on to the next thing. So I meant to make that point early and I just forgot. So I
I'm
wanted to
glad
get
you
that out
did,
there.
and it's super relevant. We are revamping some evals because it's time, and every link of the chain recognizes it's not serving us well, right? You have supervisors; they're not bad supervisors. They just don't write as much as some other ones, right? But like again, what is the toll, and how accurate is it? And just because someone has an English degree doesn't make their officer better than the other one. And we do use these for selection processes and to weigh in on things. However, because they're not as objective as they could be, people realize that there's some gaps. So I love how you point that out because I can remember an officer that actually brought up the appearance. He was not a new guy, but he was like, you know what? I am in good shape. I fit in my uniform. Nothing's bulging. I keep myself clean. I take pride in my appearance. My boots are clean. My hair is parted. Like, I know it matters to me more than a lot of people. That's fine. I'm not saying everyone needs to care like I do. However, I've never gotten exceed standards in uniform appearance. He's like, who has? And what does that look like if not me? And he was, a little tongue in cheek. He's kind of joking about it, but at the same time, like a couple of us sergeants at the time were like, fair point, man. You should probably be getting a 5, right? But we don't hand them out, and so we know what bad unsatisfactory looks like, and we know everyone else is like satisfactory, meet standards, and so that is something that we're likely to adopt and we're promoting, which is, hey, you meet, you don't meet, and if there's some extra credit kind of thing because you went above and beyond in something not like uniform appearance, but probably like initiative and caseworker judgment, like we should recognize that good stuff.
Yeah. The best was I was teaching FTO class and I gave that same example, and I asked why they only give them 3 on day 1, and somebody said because it's day 1 and you can always get better. I said, what could this person do to get better? And they just kind of gave me a blank stare. I said, just because it's day 1, it's a daily observation report. If they look good on that day, grade them on that day. If they come in the next day and they're covered in mud and they're wrinkled and they haven't shaved or whatever the requirements are, then you can grade them accordingly for day 2. But it's a daily observation report. They don't just get 3s because it's day 1, because there's always room to improve. And then I really got them when I said, what if the recruit looks better than you? And in appearance, and they were like, move on.
I'm the captain now. Yeah, they're the trainer. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, sir, we've covered a lot. I love how the conversation started with evals and we went to all these relevant tangents, like I suspected. But yeah, it does go into supervision, management, and leadership. And what is the culture, right? If you're looking for issues, you're going to find them. If you're looking for good stuff, you're looking to be objective, like what tool are we going to implement or utilize so that we can do that? We can capture that effectively. So I really appreciate your time. And please tell us what you'd like to kind of wrap things up with, and then for sure where people can reach out and find you.
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll just close on is, remember where you came from. No matter where you are in the rank structure, whether you're a patrol officer who's been on for a year, or you're the chief of police who's going to retire tomorrow. Never forget where you came from. I think if you can remember where you came from, it's much easier for you to stay relatable to the folks who are relying on you. When you lose touch with that, I think is when we start to see things kind of go off the rails. Don't be afraid to self-reflect. Don't be afraid to look in the mirror. And I'm okay with you realizing, you know what? I need to fix this, and then fix it. It's ones who can't look in the mirror or refuse to look in the mirror because, well, they got this rank or they got that rank and they just know more because they scored higher on the test or, whatever the process might be. So, thank your men and women who are out there doing this job. I have a really good friend of mine who says law enforcement is the hardest job in America, and I truly believe that it is. And I've had people challenge that, and I just adamantly disagree with them. I said, find a job where you're expected to do what cops are expected to do with the minimal training that they actually receive. Find a job where anybody else is being held to this kind of standard, and you won't. And the ones who have an open mind will listen, the others won't, but that's okay. But remind them that you appreciate what they do. It's easy to get caught up in the drama. It's easy to get caught up in the noise, but letting your people know you appreciate them and you care about them, to your point earlier, Eric, goes a long, long way in keeping them tuned in. Because if we don't have folks willing to fill these shoes, then we're going to be in big trouble. We've the pendulum, I hate to use this analogy, but the pendulum, I do believe, is swinging back, has swung back in some places. Recruiting numbers are up. We're kind of getting back to where we should be. And if we want to keep that going, we got to keep this momentum going. As far as where you can find me, the easiest place is my website, Crosden, Crosden, crosdenconsulting.com. And I really do appreciate you having me on your show today. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Chief.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.